does is, let's say that you pour water from the top. So the water goes in the edges, and yes, a lot of roots are in the edges, but the middle one is probably that they are still wet from the time that they were put together, and is no air. The disadvantage is no air underneath. So if you bring the plant and you go like that, and you start feeling smell of mold. So what happens is some of the roots are already gone, depending, like 2, 3, 4 months. And so going back a minute is, when you practice to remove that stuff, look at the soil consistency. So a friend of mine bought a tree at Home Depot, and he said, I had a bonsai too. And so a couple weeks later he calls me and says, I've been watering, he says, every day. He says, I don't even kiss my wife, but I water the plant. Says, but the leaves are wilting. So, I become a doctor, so I went there free of charge. And so I said, you have to remove this and this and this. Let's check the soil. So the soil was minute woodbark in a netting, and the roots were in the net, like well organized. And so the woodbark retained the moisture. And the middle, near the trunk, because they had the granular portion at the top, everything was rotted. And so it was taking, the rotting was taking the plant, 1. 2, it was always constant underwater. So what happens is that you're drowning the plant, basically. And so quickly we done the removal. I went home, got some soil, put it together, and we changed. And the nature of the plant survived simply because the soil changed, the whole thing got removed, and so it was done something for the longevity of the tree. Where those people that put the trees together for Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever is an industry, let's call it. So the little that they spend, the more faster that they do it, and the more they throw it out. Home Depot is only concerned to sell. Forget about anything else. Even if they take the plant back, they don't care, because for a month or 2 or 3, they have the use of that money. And so what happened is, the biggest thing is that you have to get acquainted when you purchase a tree, whether it's $50 or whether it's $400, you have to get acquainted with the soil that the tree is in, and your backyard. If your backyard is on the south side, if you have a tree that produces some shade, so that you accommodate for the moisture to evaporate, and yes, you can water twice a day and you're fine. But if you have pure direct sun, and let's say that you have a lot of this stuff in the pot. This stuff in Japan is a gentleman that is retired, so he's got about 150 plants, and he takes the watering can, he starts. And then when he reaches the end, he goes back again. And he does that for the entire hours of the sunlight, because he is very concerned of drainage, like he needs to water because of the drainage. So when you have soil that doesn't have any water retention, as Leroy said you use a little bit of potting soil in the mixture. It will help. In this soil, for instance, this is a good soil for junipers, with granular as tree bark, as granite, and we forgot lava rock. And so what happened is this one has some good retention of moist. So if you are in my backyard, it's facing south, the junipers love sunlight. So this one is perfect for twice a day watering, the morning and the night, or early afternoon, mid-late afternoon. So what happens is the pots that I'm doing when I do transplanting, I usually put these on top of the netting, and so this one allows the water to escape and also air to come from the bottom, so that you have an air exchange, right? And so the same thing does with lava rock and granite, and I have riverbed granular, so which is in this particular case, this time I got smaller than usual, but otherwise they are they are 1/4 of an inch by 1/4 of an inch pebbles. If you go in a riverbed or into a shoreline of the lake, like Nimico is a place to go when you have nothing to do. You go for a walk, you go around, and you sit there. It's nice and washed, so you just have to scrape it. And I use that a lot for drainage, but I also use it in the mix with this stuff. Has some. I usually put 15% of these, 10% of these lava rock, bark, and everything to make. You know, I don't go there and be precise, but I'm happy how I do it. I do it by eye, European style. on a tree, when you finish all your replanting and you are happy with, satisfied with everything, if you put the lava rock, which is the small, it's not so small, but anyway, they are red pebbles type of thing. If you put them at the very top as ornament, but if you put maybe 3/4 of an inch or so, I was explained by a gentleman down in the city that has bonsai, and he said it prevents from some worms, not the worms, they crawl, they're like snails, slugs. Yeah, it prevents from the slugs to crawl into that, and also other animals or parasites, because they are very rough and they scratch the bottom. So that is a good opportunity to try to keep some unwanted crawlers away. I found that when I started changing the soils and I put more granular, it's a little difficult to keep the green for a day or two. At showtime, it's okay. After that, I found that it used to keep too much moist under and created not a problem, but it was nearly. So I'm not a fanatic to put green material on top. Now, this one, who was you? Okay.
If I look at
What happened is the kitty litter is no problem. other than the big test that you have to do is you pour it in a jar, you pour this much of water, you pour the kitty litter. As the kitty litter becomes paste, you don't use it.
Okay.
If it stays granular, no problem.
But doesn't Akadama do the same sort of thing?
No.
No.
Akadama won't break down over time?
Akadama, it will break down with time.
And form like a mud?
And form like a mud. That's why I don't use it. I only have one plant, and this year is the schedule to remove that. And I actually bought it and I sold the remaining of the bag.
Okay. So as long as the kitty litter doesn't turn to goo, then it might be, you might use it, like I'm not,
Potash start with a K. Well, it starts with a K because it comes from the German kalium. That's what potash is. So you got nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. N is for growth. This is where you get your plant growth from. Now, don't use it to excess. You want to, like when you just put a plant in the ground, you don't want to load it with N. You want to let it get established first. P is for root production and flowers. That's what your phosphorus is for. And K is for energy and stalk strength. If you're growing plants that have a tendency to, in the garden, add a little, up your K value a little bit. Secondary nutrients consist of sulfur, calcium, and magnesium. The one that I'm most conscious of in bonsai is magnesium. You'll get your leaves on magnesium plants will go, I'm not an artist.